3 days left for dead on the Ketharis floor. The Deathworld girl walked back out herself. The biometric tag stopped transmitting at 04:17 on the second day. Commander Vel-Ketharis, Arvessi Frontier Authority, noted it in the incident log with the flat professionalism of someone who had recorded 100 such terminations. The human field asset designated Revacaine, age 20, contract grade 2, had been last confirmed alive at grid position Ketharis 7 Delta, roughly 8 kilometers into the jungle floor below the Vel-Ketharis canopy shelf. The log entry read, "Signal lost. Biometric flatline sustained for 11 minutes. Asset presumed non-recovered." He appended the standard notation for the mercenary crew that had retained her. Gravos charter team, 7 personnel, Arvessi licensed, currently staging at the Ketharis outpost perimeter. He did not flag the entry for review. The Ketharis floor was rated Class 15. Nothing came back out of the Ketharis floor. He moved on. She had been conscious when they pulled the trigger. That was the part they had miscalculated. The Gravos team leader, a squat, yellow-eyed Arvessi mercenary named Dreth, had assumed the venom barb in her left thigh would do the administrative work before they needed to. It was a Ketharis spine flower barb, pulled from the ground and jabbed into her leg during the altercation that had, from Dreth's perspective, resolved cleanly. The human scout had found what they needed. She had also found, unfortunately, the secondary cache that Dreth had not disclosed to the charter client. The math was simple and ugly. You did not bring a liability 8 kilometers back to the outpost when the Ketharis floor would take care of it for free. Reva hit the ground hard, rolled, and lay still. She heard them leave. She counted their boot falls until she couldn't. Then she took inventory. Left thigh, the barb. The venom was already spreading. She could feel the numbness tracking upward along the muscle fascia. She had maybe 40 minutes before the leg stopped responding. Right shoulder, dislocated when Dreth had thrown her. She had heard it go, the grinding had been educational. Left palm, sliced open on a root she had grabbed during the fall. Bleeding, not arterial. 3 broken ribs, possibly 4. She had taken a boot to the side when she was down. Breathing hurt. That was the inventory. She sat up. The Ketharis canopy filtered the light to a deep amber green, thick enough that the sky was invisible. Everything below was hot, damp, and pulsing with small sounds she had learned to categorize over 2 weeks on the floor, the harmless ones, the ones that meant something was moving toward you, and the ones that meant something was already too close. Right now she was hearing the first category. That was something. She took out her field blade with her right hand and bit down on a strip of pack webbing. Dislocating a shoulder was a few seconds of white pain. Relocating it was worse. She got the joint back roughly and held still until the nausea passed, then waited 2 more minutes before she trusted herself to move. The leg was the problem. The spine flower venom was a paralytic. It had killed 6 of the 8 members of the survey team that had mapped this grid 3 years ago, per the briefing she had read. The other 2 had made it back, because they had immediately applied pressure tourniquets above the injection site, and moved hard and fast before the compound could fix itself in the bloodstream. She had not had 40 minutes, she'd had maybe 10. She cut above the barb entry point, pressed, bled it, then stripped the pack webbing she'd already bitten through and cinched it tight above the wound. It would slow the spread, not stop it, but slow was enough if she kept moving. She stood up. The jungle looked exactly the same in every direction. She oriented on the slight luminosity difference that marked east, toward the outpost perimeter, 8 kilometers away across terrain that included 2 river crossings, a section of quake-soft ground over a subsurface gas pocket, and whatever was currently nesting in the canopy shelf at grid position Delta 3. She had mapped all of it over 2 weeks. She still had the maps in her head. She started walking. Commander Vel-Ketharis was finishing his 3rd shift rotation when the system flagged him. Biometric signal restored asset. Revacine grid position, KETHARIS 5 Bravo. He stared at the notification for several seconds. Ketharis 5 Bravo was approximately 3 kilometers inside the jungle perimeter. The asset had been flatlined for 31 hours. The asset was a non-recovery notation in an official Arvessi log. He opened the biometric feed. Heart rate, elevated but functional. Core temperature, 37.4 degrees Celsius, which was roughly what he understood as baseline for the human operating range. There was a secondary signal marker the system was flagging, partial paralytic compound in the left leg, at concentrations that, per the attached toxicology index, should have been incompatible with sustained locomotion. He cross-referenced the notation against the Class 15 hazard index for the Ketharis floor, spine flower venom, survival rate without immediate medical intervention, 6%, survival rate at 31-hour post-injection with no confirmed treatment applied. The index did not have a data set for that scenario. The field was blank. He flagged the signal. Then he pulled up the Gravos Charter team's current operational log and read it carefully. And then he sat very still for a moment with the particular stillness of someone who has just understood a thing that changes the shape of the situation considerably. He did not alert the Gravos team. The first river crossing had taken her an hour. It was not a fast river. The Ketharis drainage channels were wide and slow and dark, with suspended mineral particulate that made depth reading unreliable. She had tested the bottom with her blade shaft before every step, found the crossing point she remembered from the survey, and moved across at a pace that kept her head above water when the channel deepened to her chest. The current had pushed against her left side. She had let it. Fighting a current with 3 broken ribs was a losing proposition. The answer was angle, not force. She had come out on the far bank 20 meters downstream from where she'd entered and considered that a reasonable outcome. The leg was worse. The numbness had reached her knee despite the tourniquet. She was dragging the foot slightly, not enough to stop her, but enough that she had to consciously correct her stride every few steps or she would clip roots and go down. Going down was not an option she was entertaining. The ground here was root-dense and wet, and going down meant staying down. She stopped and looked at the leg, with the same flat assessment she had given the shoulder. There was a plant she had documented on the first week of the survey. The Ketharis crew had called it a grey root, and the briefing notes mentioned that the local fauna chewed the rind when injured, specifically around bite wounds that developed the particular muscle rigidity that spine flower venom caused. The briefing had not elaborated. Briefings rarely did. But she had catalogued a dense growth of it at the base of a split canopy column, roughly 100 meters east-northeast of her current position, because she catalogued everything she saw, and she remembered everything she catalogued. She found it in 11 minutes. The rind was bitter and pulped easily between 2 rocks. She packed the paste directly into the wound above the barb site, wrapped it with the last clean section of pack webbing, and waited. After 20 minutes, the tingling started. That was something. Whether it was the grey root or just the venom progressing, she wouldn't know for another hour. But she was out of better options, and the outpost was still 4.5 kilometers away, and she was already behind the pace she needed. She started moving again. The signal was at grid position Ketharis 4 Alpha when Commander Orveth pulled in his senior monitoring officer, Verath, and showed him the feed without explanation. Verath was a competent Arvessi officer who had worked the Ketharis frontier station for 4 years. He looked at the biometric display. He looked at the incident log notation, flatline, non-recovery, timestamped 37 hours ago. He looked at the paralytic compound indicator on the toxicology feed. He looked at the signal moving, steadily and continuously, through terrain that the hazard index classified as requiring full environmental containment protocol for any Arvessi personnel. He said nothing for a long moment. "The Gravos team," Orveth said, He did not frame it as a question. Vereth pulled the charter team's last operational log update. They had reported the human asset as lost during a routine retrieval operation. Equipment failure, environmental hazard, the report said. Standard non-recovery language. Vereth had processed similar reports before. He had never questioned them, because non-recoveries on the Ketharis floor were routine. The secondary cache at Delta 7, Orveth said. She found it. Vereth set the log down. She's been moving for 37 hours, Orveth continued. Spine flower venom, dislocated shoulder per the impact markers, 3 to 4 rib fractures per the biometric, no medical intervention logged, no extraction team, no signal relay. He paused. She is 2.1 kilometers from the outpost perimeter. Neither of them said anything for a moment. What do we do? Vereth said. We watch, Orveth said. We document, and we make sure the Gravas team's departure logs are frozen until she reaches the perimeter. The Quakesoft ground over the gas pocket had been the hardest section. She had known it was coming. She had mapped the boundary markers, the slight subsidence in the root structure, the faint sulfur-sweet smell at ground level, the way the ambient insect noise dropped off in a rough circle around the unstable zone. She had marked it in her survey notes as, "Do not traverse on foot, the subsidence risk, gas ignition hazard." She had written that note herself. She traversed it anyway, because the alternatives were a 3-kilometer detour through confirmed apex predator territory or a 2-kilometer detour through the river marshland that the survey team had classified as non-survivable after dark, and it was already dark. She went across the soft ground on her hands and one knee, distributing her weight, moving slowly. The leg she dragged. The grey-root paste had partially restored sensation to the knee and upper calf, which meant she could feel it when the foot sank, which it did twice, both times to ankle depth, both times recovered by bracing on her forearm and pulling. The second time she felt the ground shift slightly beneath her and heard a low subsurface groan and stopped moving entirely for 60 seconds. Nothing further happened. She kept going. She was across in 40 minutes. She lay on solid ground for 3 minutes and stared at the canopy above her and breathed carefully around the ribs. Then she got up. The outpost lights were visible through the tree line ahead, not far now. The perimeter sensor triggered at 03:44 local time. Commander Orveth was watching the feed live. He had been watching it for the last 6 hours. The perimeter camera image was poor resolution in the pre-dawn ambient light, but it was sufficient. A human figure stepped out of the tree line and stood at the perimeter boundary. She was carrying a field blade in her right hand. Her left leg had a tourniquet above the knee. Her shoulder was visibly misaligned. She was covered in mud from the river crossing and ground dark from the gas pocket traverse, and she had been moving continuously through a Class 15 Deathworld for 63 hours on a paralytic venom load that should have stopped her in the first 40 minutes. She stood at the boundary and looked at the outpost. Then she started walking toward it. Orveth pulled up the biometric feed one more time. Heart rate 94, core temperature 37.1, paralytic compound present but declining. He noted that the decline was consistent with a topical counteragent application roughly 4 hours prior. He noted that there was no counteragent in any of the standard field kit specifications for a charter grade 2 asset. He noted that the Ketharis floor was a Class 15 biome and she had apparently sourced her own. He sat with that for a moment. Then he opened the outpost channel to the Gravas team's bunkroom. "This is Commander Orveth Salversh, Arvessi Frontier Authority. Your charter is suspended pending investigation. Do not leave the outpost." He paused. "Your field asset has returned." He watched the camera feed as Rivakane walked through the outpost gate, alone, unhurried, still holding the blade. There was a long silence on the Gravas channel. Then Dreth said, in a voice that had lost all its operational flatness, "That's not possible." Orveth looked at the biometric data on his screen. The signal was clean, continuous, and currently registering at the gate checkpoint. He looked at the incident log entry, flatline, non-recovery, and the timestamp that was now 63 hours old. He had been writing these logs for 9 years. He had written non-recovery notations across 11 Class 15 and above designations. He had never once had cause to reopen one. He opened the log. He changed the status. He did not write recovered. He did not have a category for what had happened here. He typed, asset returned under own capability. Cause of survival outside documented parameters for Class 15 exposure. Reclassification of hazard assessment recommended. Gravos charter team. Charter suspended. Personnel detained. Secondary cache investigation ongoing. He looked at the camera feed one more time. Rivakane had stopped walking in the middle of the outpost yard. She was standing still, facing the Gravos bunkroom door. She had not dropped the blade. Dreth had not come out yet. Orveth noted the time. He suspected Dreth would not be in any hurry.